So today on UK Talk Radio, this is very much a musical journey, and the journey takes us up to your fantastic new song, which is called First Walk. But I'm going to take you back to the beginning. It's a little bit like this is your life, really. Where did your interest in music first begin?
So I was about 5 or 6 years old, and my grandparents on my mother's side are actually from Poland. And so they were very musical, and a lot of them, I think almost all of them, used to play an instrument. And I remember going to evening, visiting family, and it was always ended up by someone picking up a guitar or a violin and start singing. So they were really surrounded by music. And so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother when I was younger. My parents were working. And I remember she had quite a good record collection, lots of light classical music like Johann Strauss, lots of operetta. She used to sing a lot. And I remember particularly two tracks that she used to sing was Lara's theme for Dr. Zhivago, it was already film music, and also the melody to Limelight by Charlie Chaplin. So I thought she probably felt that I might have an affinity with music and asked me if I wanted to learn an instrument. And straight away I said yes. So that's when I enrolled the music academy locally. And I picked up classical guitar. Then later on, I went on to studying drums, singing. And it's only a bit later when I came to London that I decided to study piano and orchestration and composition.
And from there, you've certainly moved on. So you've written the music for a groundbreaking TV series, which is on BBC World. That's the history of Africa. So tell us how you approach a project like this.
Well, the history of Africa was a bit of a marathon. I think it was 2.5 years in the making. And I started doing research probably 6 to 10 months before the filming actually started. So I knew I was quite familiar with some of the music in North Africa, but for the rest, it was all a big mystery to me. And Zainab traveled to over 30 different countries. So that gave us a lot of opportunity for diversity in the music. So there was a lot to learn there for me. Also, it was probably the biggest project I had done by then. I had worked with Zainab a couple of years before on a documentary called The Lost Child, but this was a very different type of fish. And we had obviously very tight deadlines. And as you get closer to the end of the program, the deadline that tend to get shorter and shorter. So I needed to get used to that. And I remember for the very first episode, Mother Africa, I sort of took my time and I spent I put a lot of details in there. And Zainab came home once to listen to the music, and she said, "Well, it's all well, but you're gonna have to work a little bit faster, otherwise we'll never make delivery on time." So yeah, I did then learn to work faster. And working with her was amazing because she has this, I mean, she can multitask. She has an amazing eye for detail. She knows what works, what doesn't work. And so the whole team learned a lot. And by the time we got to season 2 of The History of Africa, which was another 11 episodes, we were like a well-oiled machine and were working much better.
A very disciplined process, but obviously which you've taken to and have worked well with. Your next project, creating the main theme for Take Me to the Opera, which was a series. So again, something completely different. Tell us a little bit about the work on this project.
Yeah, that was completely different, a very different type of music. Zainab is a big lover of opera music. And I think back in 2019, I think it was just before the lockdown, she traveled to Italy, to La Scala, to see a favorite baritone. He's a singer called Leonucci. And I think she got to meet him after the show, and she thought, why not have a program about this guy, that she loved so much. where he could talk about how he got into music, his background, look back on his career. So BBC World was quite keen on that, and the program did extremely well. We had very good feedback. But for that particular episode, what I did is just recreate some well-known classical pieces of music. But because the feedback was so good, BBC World decided to create a series out of it, and that's when Take Me to the Opera was born. So Zainab asked me to write the main theme, and because I had been working with her for quite a few years now, I sort of knew the type of music she would like. So she likes things that are quite fun and driven. So I wrote this theme that would create this sort of fun opening and this anticipation for what was coming. And so it went really well, and they loved the theme. So that was a great project to work on.
A successful project, a project
Yes.
which has done very well for you. And let's come almost up to date. So your latest project is The Companion. Now, this is a soundtrack. Again, something a little bit different. So explain a little bit more about this project and how it's worked for you.
I read the book Monsieur, Lin and His Child quite a few years back. I think it was just after the book was published. And it had a huge impact on me. I absolutely loved the story. And I decided that I wanted to tell the story with music. Now, between the two different seasons of the history of Africa, I was looking for a new project. And my wife said to me, why don't you do this project that you always wanted to do? And so I started writing different theme for the different character of the book. Then lockdown happened, and that gave me plenty of time to finish and complete the project. So what I did is that I treated the book as if it was a movie, basically. So I divided it in 12 parts, and I tried with the music to follow the dramatic arc of the story. I knew I wanted an orchestral score, but I also knew that although in the book it is not mentioned where Monsieur Lin is, we know that he comes from East Asia somehow. And so I wanted to integrate within the score some East Asian flavor. So I used instruments like the eru, the qdi, some Chinese percussion. But then I had the challenge of making a distinction between his country and the new place where he was going to be. And so for that, I actually lean more towards a jazzy feel for the music with like a rhythm section, some saxophone and clarinet solo. So once everything was written, I then orchestrated all the pieces. And then I thought it was time to contact the author in France, so Monsieur Philippe Claudel. I was very keen to use the name of his character and the title of the book for the album. So I found his agent. He put me in touch with him, and he was extremely nice, and he agreed straight away. Though he did ask me to send him the music. Luckily, he loved it very much. So that was a massive plus to have his support with this project. So
Because after you put all that work in it, it wouldn't have been quite so good if he'd have turned it down. So that's fantastic that
yeah, I would have had to
liked
change all the titles and
it.
obviously find a
Yes.
different theme for
Yes.
it. Yes.
Yes, and obviously it's a project which you're passionate about. So I'm glad that it all worked out for you, and
Yes,
the
it did.
author worked with you, which is great. And we come right up to date now. So the current single that we're playing on UK Talk Radio, that's called First Walk. So tell us a little bit about this song.
Yeah, so that piece is it's actually the piece that illustrates the very first time the main character of the book, Monsieur Lin, take a first walk through this new city. Being a refugee, is sleeping in his dormitory with all the other refugees and his granddaughter. And the staff there sort of tease him and makes a bit fun of him because he's quite afraid to go out. It's a different climate from the place where he grew up. He doesn't speak the language. And also they tell him story about people snatching children. So he's not very keen on taking his first steps through the city. So eventually he does go walking through the city. He's faced with the chaos, the noise, the traffic, and then ends up in this park. where he will be thinking about his home, his village, which probably doesn't exist anymore as war has ravaged the whole place. So there were three different sections within that track that I wanted to do. The first section, it's supposed to represent his fears about going out and walking there. And so it started pretty slowly, quite somber and menacing. And then once he started walking to the city, the piano sort of pick up and provide this sort of movement for the track. Now, for the second part, when he has to face the noise of a modern city, I thought about this Sting song called Englishman in New York. And in the bridge of that particular song, he has this jazz section playing, and it's immediately followed by those really hard hitting drums. And I thought maybe this would be a good idea to combine the two to represent this sort of busy, noisy city. So that's what I did, and I thought it worked quite well. Now, for the third part, it had to be something much more intimate and delicate. And there was a theme that I wrote called the war theme, which actually opens up the album with these really loud clusters of strings supported by very heavy percussion. And what I did is I stripped down that particular cluster of string to a very basic melody. And this time I used it on the piano, and that worked really well to express, his feeling of sadness and melancholy, thinking about what he had to leave behind and where he is now.
A very powerful song and a piece of music with different moods. So thank you for explaining it to us. We'll be playing that on UK Talk Radio. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.